I do want to shift gears again, but I just want to underscore that in-person human connection. And I've heard this term when the internet first came out, campfires in cyberspace. I think it was a researcher, David Thornburg. And it was, what a great metaphor. Campfires in cyberspace. We're all going to connect, and there's this new way of distance is going to be shortened, and we're going to be able
Right.
to share ideas and and it's true. It's all true. But we have to continue that human, that analog.
That's right.
And I think that the skill of looking somebody in the eye, you mentioned shaking your hand.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of body language experts on our podcast, and those are some of the most popular episodes. Think about that for a minute, where it's almost the generation of your daughter, our children could be, oh my God, they're such a good speaker. Not because you practiced the keynote, because you can walk into a restaurant or a store or somewhere, a game, and speak to the
Yeah.
usher or ask for directions or find out something that you need to help your family get somewhere or something. And those skills that were developed because we didn't have doom
Lateral.
scrolling, and that could go
Yeah.
on, were kind of by omission developed out of need, now are have to be kind of introduced, like wood shop and home ec, like
That's
how to
right.
talk to a human being, And it's just fascinating. And I'm from the generation, I'm a Gen Xer, and I know I'm active from a pure business standpoint on social media, mostly LinkedIn, some Instagram, some TikTok, some YouTube. And I still harvest my most business in person.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's no two ways around it. And I'm not discounting, like you said, there's still other platforms and we have to use them. And it's a tool, but I know where the bread is buttered.
Yeah.
And
I have two really great stories about this that I
please,
feature in the latest book,
hold on,
Digital
hold
Body.
on. Go ahead.
I have two great I have two great stories I'd love to share about this from my latest book, Digital Body Language. The first is about a leader who hired a Gen Zer. It was a sales team, and top performing college student hired him in, and she was in a sales meeting with him, and he was meant to lead part of it. And she could see the client was starting to get disengaged, was turning a different way, was getting disinterested, was showing all the traditional body language cues, the shrugged shoulder, the turned eye. And the Gen Zer couldn't pick up on any of these body language cues. He just kept talking. He was looking down. He was missing the cues that they really needed to change the conversation or divert it in a very different way. And she realized that she was more of what I'll call a digital adapter that grew up with body language first and then had to learn digital body language. But for this Gen Zer, he grew up with the digital first and is now needing to learn traditional body language. So she's had to build a whole training for her younger employees, picking up on the cues of the handshake and the head nod and the lean in and all of those other traditional signals. Another story I'll share is a leader who had a junior assistant take her phone calls in the office. And one day she came back and the junior assistant, who was a female, says, Bob called. And she said, Bob who? Bob which client? Bob from where? And turns out she never learned how to take a message because she grew up with the phone culture where you could see who called on the iPhone. And so it's this whole different way of engaging that's really important. And what we have to remember is that in today's workplace, we have what I'll call digital natives, those that really thrive and are different from you, Seth. Some of them, talk more through text than through in-person meetings. They prefer virtual. They prefer the Slack IM. That the Hangout is in the IM channels versus the in-person meeting. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are those I call the digital adapters who, again, prefer in-person. They're like my dad, who, when he sends a text message, it starts with Dear Erica and ends with Love Dad. And I have to scroll through it because it's as long as a handwritten letter. And we're often somewhere in between. But what's really important now, again, is to understand yourself a little more. Understand for you, as a business owner, what will help you in your business, what's important, but be able to navigate both traditional body language and digital body language. That we have to become like an immigrant. Like I was an immigrant becoming fluent in English and Hindi. We have to be fluent in these different languages and know how to adapt the signals and cues in these different environments. So that senior executive that needs to motivate a company of thousands of employees in different distances, he's got to get good at his digital body language. That new employee that needs to build trust in the office has got to get good at traditional body language. But the reality is, it's a yes and now, not an either or.
Correct. Yeah. It's right. It's not an either or. It's pure possibility. It's not this constraint, one or the other, right? It's
Right. You
both.
build digital relationships to actually then get to meet more people in person and deepen
Yeah.
that.